Why are you the way that you are? Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're taking a look at the Shouer Tape Pro. This is a $130 Chinese-made electret driver IEM. It's a revision of a previous model that I haven't heard, but there's definitely some hype surrounding it. By the impression of a few reviewers, you might think these are fantastic. And they might be for you, but they weren't for me. I was quite disappointed. This was definitely not what I was expecting. And I want to share my impressions so that you know exactly what you're getting into. Getting started, I guess we're gonna do this in a little bit of a different order than the previous video. I'm not gonna go over the contents of the box. I did an unboxing. If you are interested to see what comes with it and doesn't, like the foam tips that are supposed to come with it aren't in the box, you can check out the unboxing. But starting with the technicalities, soundstage is weird. You know, it sounds like the sound is contained inside your head. With some IEMs, you get the impression that, you know, the music is happening inside the IEM and you're getting, you know, this sound stage between the two IEMs that are in your ears. This one feels narrower than that. It feels like the music is coming from the end of the nozzle inside my ear canal. And so it feels quite claustrophobic, very closed in. And then weirdly, from time to time, there's a sound that sounds like it's coming from way out over to the right side or way out over to the left side. They're not always only high frequency sounds. I have a theory as to what this might be caused by that we'll go into a little bit later. But the soundstage is narrow and confusing. The imaging also is very bizarre. I haven't had an IEM that images like this one. It sounds forward from the, you know, if there's a line going through your head between your ears, this sounds like the sound is coming from somewhat in front of it, but there's no clear center image. There's the song Letter by Yoshi Horikawa has a writing that's supposed to go kind of from beyond your left ear up, you know, at the top of your forehead, and then keeps going towards beyond your right ear. It's the writing of a pencil. And this doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it's coming from inside your ear canal up towards the top of your head, and then jumps over the front and then comes back down to your ear. So there isn't a clear center image. The imaging seems a little bit strange, you know, even in these two areas, to the center left and center right. It's not all bad, but it's definitely bizarre. It is interesting to have kind of a vertical movement in the sound as I'm listening to it, but yeah, the imaging, you know, is not clear. There's no clear center image. One thing that it does do very impressively is dynamics, the impact. I'm wondering exactly what this electret driver is, because all sounds, almost every instrument, has a percussive quality to it. There's impact. Most sounds seem to have an edge to them. As far as detail goes, detail retrieval, in the mid-range and upper mid-range, it's pretty good. There seems to be a lot of detail there. In the upper treble proper, so to speak, there's an impression of detail, but there are definitely songs that I felt like I was missing something. It wasn't complete. So detail is a little bit hit or miss. It doesn't offend, but again, when we get to the frequency response, I think it'll explain why it sounds that way. So yeah, that's what I've got for technicalities. Soundstage is strange, imaging is strange, the sense of impact and dynamics is really surprising. I'm almost getting a planar feel out of it, but you know, like little sundaras in my ears, but not quite. But only when it comes to like the impact and the plucked feeling of instruments like a guitar string or a bass guitar or even piano sounds very percussive. And the detail is kind of hit or miss. Let's talk about the build. This is where I feel like we're going to spend most of our time. So they come with this beautiful cable. This is an awesome cable. It is nicely wound. It's not a complex braid. It's soft, it bends, doesn't hold its shape too much. It's not very heavy. It's an excellent cable that you will hate using. And you'll hate using it because of the ear hooks. I had the worst time getting these ear hooks to stay on my ears. They're too tall, too wide, and no matter what I do to try to bend them, they will not tighten their shape. I could try heating them. I could try cutting this off and just letting the cable softly rest over my ear. I know some people have done that with some success, but I wanted to show you this in the review, so let me go ahead and do that. So paying particular attention to this area as it just starts to rise over the ear lobe. Here's another cable. Yeah, what this ends up doing, sadly, is as you put it in your ear, the effect here is that the ear hook has no chance of staying on top of your earlobe as is, at least with my pretty normally sized ears. And it tends to come over top the earlobe and hang on the outside and slowly pull your IEM out of your ear. At the very least, because it is not really properly directing the force downward and it starts drifting over your ear, it starts breaking the seal. One of the biggest disappointments have been the ergonomics. I was really hoping that this particular shape would not be a problem, but it seems like it is. I had particular issues with hot spots off of the corners here. These three, basically as the IEM sits in your ear, these three corners touch the inside of your earlobe. Basically this sits inside your earlobe, and then a part of your pinna covers the corner right here. This kind of sits behind it, and that's, I guess, what's supposed to keep it in to maintain the fit, but it gets really uncomfortable. I feel like over the course of, I don't know, about 70 hours of listening since I got them, maybe a little bit less, but this has been a challenge. I feel like at this point they're not bothering me as much. Maybe there's a callus developing in my ear. Another thing to note is that you can see some silver accents kind of popping up on the corners. If you get these, I recommend buying the bare metal version, as those scuffs will not show up as much. Those definitely started showing very quickly within the first couple of days. So I had the roughest time getting these to seal in my ears. I went through a large number of my own ear tips, foam tips, hybrids, short stem, longer stem. I had a hard time getting these to seal, and I think that I know why. On the one hand, this is a big nozzle. It's wide. It's hard to put tips over it. And I thought that, since this comes with little replacement meshes that they call bass attenuators, that this would change the sound, and so you gotta use gotta use this. It doesn't. I tried both of them. They include a spare set. They sound the same. It doesn't seem like this is really affecting the sound in a noticeable way. You can see through them right now. They're not very dense. They just keep wax out of the bores. I tried using tips with the stem exposed like this, thinking that perhaps it won't put as much pressure on my inner ear and they'll stay in more. What I ended up doing is basically kind of giving up and just trying to get them to fit as deeply as possible with the ear tips provided. And I've reached a compromise where I'm using the small ear tips, small standard ear tips that came with the filter, and I basically push them in as far as they go, and they'll stay there sealed for about, I don't know, 10 minutes or so before they either start pushing themselves out or just become uncomfortable. It's a big shame. I think part of the reason is this angle. It seems like it's a little too extreme. It's pushed, the nozzle is angled forward too much compared to some other IEMs. I know it's normal to have some forward angle because that's the way the ear canal moves inside, but I feel like my ear canal tries to turn a lot sooner than where this nozzle wants to sit. And so instead of the IEM, fitting in nicely and staying there, it's kind of jammed in, and as soon as the ear starts to hurt or the inner ear starts to push it out, you lose the seal, it's uncomfortable, and the sound suffers tremendously. So let's talk about sound. I've been using them, well, not with the original cable, but with my own balanced cable. By the way, the original one comes balanced with an adapter to 3.5mm. How cool is that? That should really be the standard going forward with any IEMs, really. I think that's awesome. I'm going to assume proper fit as I describe the sound signature, and then I'll describe what happens when you don't get a proper fit, which is more than half the time. So when it's properly fitting in my ear, I hear a nice, full, if a little sloppy bass, but it's fun, it's engaging, and it's very tactile. I've felt it in my jaw. The upper bass and lower mid-range is pretty bloated. This does not come down early enough, in my opinion, in terms of that bass shelf. It keeps it all the way into the lower mid-range. And unfortunately, this makes some things sound a little compressed, a little muffled. It's not offensive. It does mean things have body, but it's not my preference. The mid-range is recessed by comparison. Male vocals tend to sound a little bit recessed. Female vocals, especially those who are singing in their upper range, are much more forward, because this is one of those IEMs with a really weird tuning where the pinna region between 1K, 1 to 8, let's say, is really boosted, disproportionately so. I hear that this is an improvement from the original Tape Pro, or the original tape, which came out about a year ago. Oh man, this is still too much. Female vocals often come off shouty because the high frequencies above that pinna region are really unbalanced. You get this compressed kind of sound. In all fairness, they are never sibilant, which is nice, but they are edgy, especially in songs with orchestral stringed instruments, leading female vocals, distorted electric guitar, all stuff that I really like, by the way. it's hard. It's really hard to enjoy these. I mean, every once in a while they sound just right, like on the Rumors album by Fleetwood Mac, because the lead female vocal is a little bit recessed in the mix, and it's kind of a fun, well-recorded album anyway. It sounds great. It's really enjoyable. You hear a lot of the dynamics in the song. They're pop songs, right? They sounds good. I think with pop songs, with EDM, stuff like that, you know, it's acceptable. But if you have like well-mastered, well-recorded tracks that you enjoy and you know, note by note, I found them to be disappointing with that kind of music. Jazz, classic rock, classical. It's just the timbre is way off, and I think it has all to do with that frequency response, where the pinna region is too high, has too much of an accent in that area. The treble is not balanced. It sounds more recessed than it should be, and the mid-range is pretty recessed as well. And so you end up with this kind of bassy, little muffled but shouty presentation, which on some songs, when they fit well, it works. On many songs, it doesn't. And especially when they don't fit well, things get really bad. Like all IEMs, sound is seal dependent. As soon as there's a diminished CO on either one, it sounds like you've got a channel imbalance. There's bass is lost. Highs actually get lost. It seems like what the IEM really wants to do is get pushed out, like I mentioned earlier. And when it gets pushed out of the ear, and instead of sitting kind of flat, if you look at the outer side, imagine this is a top-down view of your head, and it's sitting flush with the outside of your ear. What ends up starting to happen is they get pushed out like this. The back of the IEM starts to dig more into your outer ear, which is annoying. The cable is more likely to pull the IEM out over your ear. You know, that really beautiful, awesome cable that you can't use. Sorry. And as this gets pushed out of your ear, you lose the high frequency, that the past 8K air that you had before, and it sounds more compressed, more muffled. You lose the air, and you're left with a very shouty upper mid-range presentation of music that is uncomfortable to listen to. And you can hear this, even if it doesn't feel like your IEMs are getting pushed out, at least even it doesn't feel like my IEMs are getting pushed out of my ears. If I grab the backside and just kind of push them in like this to try to straighten the nozzle with my inner ear, if I push them out like this, that's when they sound their best. And mind you, it's still not amazing, but it basically has to be in this position. If they're like this, losing a little bit of the highs, start to get a little uncomfortable, and then they slowly get pushed out, and you get to that nightmare scenario where they start falling out of your ear, or they get uncomfortable in the back, and just these are just disappointing. There's so much to love about that impactful presentation, about the cool aesthetic, and I'm not even gonna bother with you can unscrew these. They give you a little tool that I don't recommend you use. Just use a Phillips driver with a little piece of microfiber if you really want to. You can take these out and swap them to increase the bass. The bass is already too sloppy for its own good. There's plenty of it. I don't think that adding bass is what this IEM needs by any stretch, so I didn't bother with that. I also don't think I have a defective IEM, because they both sides sound the same to my ears. It's just a shame. I love the idea. I love the technology of the driver, even though I don't fully understand it. I couldn't find that much to read about it. So this isn't a Harman tune. It's not a diffuse field tune. But it might be adhering to a different target. I have been reading that there are multiple IEMs with a very similar tuning that are directed towards a specific target market. I don't understand what that is. It seems to be in Asia, mainly. Maybe it doesn't have specifically to do with the demographic geographically, but musically, like a particular genre that people like. That sounds good with this. I haven't found it. It's just a shame that they don't fit properly. So ultimately, I can't recommend these to most people. They should not be your only IEM. If you're just getting started and wanting to get into in-ear monitor headphones, these are not the ones. You know, if you have a collection and you're interested in hearing something different, and you're fine in just putting them in for 15 minutes, listening to a few songs, and then taking them out and switching to something else. They sound different enough, and you might have, you know, some really fun experiences with a few songs from time to time. That is the only place where I can really recommend them. That breaks my heart. Because I really wanted to like these. Know what you're getting into. You might enjoy them. But other than that, probably should stay away, honestly speaking. I don't have that much more to say about these. They are not as good as the Theaudio Legacy 3. Consequently, they are not as good as the Theaudio Legacy 5. They're not as good as the Moondrop Starfield. They're not as good as the KXXX. Or, heck, let me throw you a curveball here. But I would rather listen to the BLON 01, which is a $20 IEM. You know, it doesn't have a beautiful cable. It comes with crappy ear tips. These are my own that I've replaced. But it's pretty comfortable. It seals well. It stays in my ear. It's not too bassy. It's got a lot more detail. The highs are much better balanced with the upper mid-range and the mid-range. And it doesn't have the same technical proficiency, right? It doesn't have that same sense of impact. But the staging is natural. The imaging is good. If you're just getting started, and you've heard a lot about the Shouer Tape Pro, just get these instead. Get started here. This might be all you need. So, like I said, ultimately, this is not a good all-around IEM. The fit is very temperamental. The sound signature is not universally pleasing, and you're going to have a distorted view of music if this is the only way that you hear it long term. Anyway, guys, until next time, Merry Christmas and God bless you all.